and catch me live in Amsterdam at the Common Sense. Tonight at 8, I beat the Attorney General in federal court. No lawyers. My legal team was AI. And catch me live in Amsterdam at the Common Sense event. The link is on your screen. First up, lever 1 ends it. Pull the first lever. The money.
One fight, one question. Is it a qualification or is it procedure? If it is a qualification, Thornton ends it. That is the whole war. Lever 1 ends it. No balancing. Lever 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Lever 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Call it what it is. It's a qualification. Thornton shuts the door on the whole conversation. Fixed and exclusive. Nothing to weigh. It is not how heavy, it's a qualification. No balancing today. Lever 1 ends it. No balancing. No balancing. Lever 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Lever 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Even on the scale, even playing the game. Total exclusion. Heaviest burden in the frame. Weighed against an interest already fully served. I win the balance on their own curve. Lever 1 ends it. No balancing. No balancing. Lever 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Lever 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Lever 3, you never reached the Constitution at all. New Hampshire law never required this call. A registered voter is all the statute demands. No board approval, the law already stands. The state cannot do indirectly what Thornton forbids directly. Add a qualification for the United States Senate. Lever 1 ends it. No balancing. No balancing. Lever 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Lever 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. 1 ends it. 2 wins it. 3 skips it. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Accept my June 12 declaration as timely filed. Accept my June 12 declaration as timely filed. Anyone wins.
Doe. Going once, not for sale. They are buying New Hampshire's Senate seat.
That 1-1. Senate seat going once. 50-50 in the room, 1 point in the state. Bids on the floor. Left, right, and every road, we hear you. Going once, not for sale. Going twice, not for sale. 1 seat, whole country, not for sale. Left, right, every road, not for sale. 40 on the table out of Vegas in the spring. Adelson wrote the check, the leadership funds the ring. 17 for Sununu, biggest bet in a decade. Republican Jewish coalition where the introductions are made. Packing the wings, the pro-Israel Pax machine. 15 and a half already carved Massey off the scene. 55 to 45, most expensive house ever run. Kentucky was the warning shot, New Hampshire's lot 1. Where the floor, we hold the margin, we already know the price. We counted every zero and we already told you twice. Stop surveilling Sununu. Retribution for Massey. Stop the Adelson takeover. No foreign money on our seat. La two Sununu, 08. top of us, handed the oversight, see why the country's in a mess. 7 months on the panel, then he walked away clean. Boston Scientific Board while he's still on the team. Time Warner Cable elected him the very same year. Watchdog on the hand and the him paid the steer. Under a million walking in, 36 walking out, acting up influence without a filing to shout his own bio. Brags a global finance chair. We read every line, we know exactly what's there. Not so, not so. Sununu so. Not so, not so. Hey, hey, hey. Block 3 on the block 2001. Woo, woo. Patriot Act Sununu, yes. Then voted to extend the bond. National ID wave through inside a war bill. Records taken in secret and a gag to keep you still. One database of everyone, no warrant on the door. They can ask your bank, your doctor, and you'll never even know. Not for sale, not for sale, not for sale. 2016, one man on the ballot line. Aaron Day drew 17,742 that time. AI lost the seat by 1,017. That's the margin, that's the lever, that's the math, the room is seen. The check clears in Vegas, the podium's in Manchester, but the floor holds the key and the floor is the register. This is not incompetence. This is conquest. Stop surveillance, Sununu. Retribution for massive. Stop the adults and take over. No foreign money on our seat. Stop surveillance, Sununu. Retribution for massive. Stop the adults and take over. No foreign money on our seat. I don't dare. I don't dare. I don't dare.
Hear the 7 calling. Demand 1, free the crypto political prisoners.
Do you hear the 7 calling, calling from their cages still? Do you hear the promise breaking on the president's hill? I ran the embassy in Keene, where the small bills changed their hands. 8 years for digital cash, for laws written before the networks stand. Do you hear the 7 calling, calling from their cages still? Free Ian Freeman, free them all, pardon them all, before the bell. 50 million and a gag order. The judge took my voice with my gold. Roger Ver in the Spanish hold. The bill is not paid, the truth's still untold. Do you hear the 7 calling, calling from their cages still? Free Roger Ver, free them all, pardon them all, before the bell. Sterling Golf stood on the map, 12 and a half on a black box. Roman Storm wrote the contract, 40 years on the table. Keown built the wallet, Christmas Eve, Morgantown. William wrote privacy at 67. 4 years from Lisbon, Ray banked the unbanked. Schools in his name, deported. Do you hear the 7 calling, calling from their cages still? Free them all, pardon them all, before the bell. code is free speech, said the director. The war is over, said the acting AG. But the cages stayed locked when the speeches ended, and the world watched the promise become a lie. Senate 52-49, the House about to flip. End the war or lose Congress, pardon them all before the bell. You pardon Ross, the 7 are still on. America won't leave the world in crypto. If it cages its innovators, do you hear the 7 calling, calling from their cages still? Free them all, pardon them all before the bell. The code outlives the warden. The code outlives. The code outlives the warden. Free Ian, free Roger, free Ronan, free Storm, free Keon, free William, free Ray. Pardon them all. The code outlives the warden.
Move your money. The Cantor Counter. Demand 2. Fire Howard Lutnick.
One.
Gather round, lads. Gather round, lasses. I've a tale of the commerce man's crooked asses. Howard wrote the number 4 times too high, 0.25 when the truth was a mile away in the sky. His boy at the Cantor counter with a grin, buying up the refund rights while the paper was thin. 20 cents on the dollar. Daddy says hold, while the son's in the back room raking in the gold. Lutnick wrote it 4 times high. Lutnick watched the country cry. Brandon bought the rights on the sly. Cantor took the payday pie. Raise a glass and move your money. Move your money, move your money. Raise a glass and move your money. To the carnival, goodbye. Ruskin wrote the letter. Wade and wrote another. Warren lit the fire. Ackman pulled the cover. Wired showed the memo. The scholars showed the math. The Supreme Court rang the bell. 6-3 for the wrath. 180 billion to the people they come. But the Cantor boys were waiting when the deal was done. Transfer to the sons, the divestiture a sham. The house was still a house and the crowd still a scam. Hey! Lutnick wrote it 4 times high. Lutnick watched the country cry. Brandon bought the rights on the sly. Cantor took the payday pie. Raise a glass and move your money. Move your money, move your money. Raise a glass and move your money. To the carnival, goodbye. They'll tell you it was legal. They'll tell you it was clean. They'll tell you divestiture was everything it seemed. But the platform's still the same, and the family's still the name, and the terminal still clears what the Cantor boys arrange. I pulled my money from the bank last Tuesday, put it in a credit union down the bay, buying bread from the baker where the names are owners. Coffee down in Zano where the grid ain't theirs. Neighbor runs the mesh, co-op runs the bread, building parallel systems while the carnival is dead. Raise a pint to the exit, raise a pint to the door.
the carnival, I won't be there no more. Lutnick rode it 4 times high. Lutnick watched the country cry. Brandon bought the rights on the sly. Cantor took the payday pie. Raise a glass and move your money, move your money, move your money. Raise a glass and move your money. To the carnival, goodbye.
Trap in disguise. Demand 3. Kill the Clarity Act.
I woke up to silence, but the war had begun. They froze my account, said I'd done something wrong. Wasn't no crime, just living free. Now the system got a chain on me.
They took my savings, my future, my land, with a single code line and a government hand. Said it was safety, said it was green, but all I see is tyranny behind the screen. This ain't innovation, it's a trap in disguise. You'll own nothing, be watched all your life. Genius ain't freedom, reality ain't clear. It's a cage they built while we cheer. I believed in the promise, the man with a plan, but the same old swamp just changed its brand. He banned the front door, opened the back, signed the bills that launched the final attack. This ain't innovation, it's a trap in disguise. You'll own nothing, be watched all your life. Genius ain't freedom, quality ain't clear. It's a cage they built while we cheer. Your gold, your guns, your voice, your name, they'll digitize it all, then shift the blame. Palantirizing AI chains, freedom dying slow in patriotic flames. This ain't about safety, it's control in disguise. With your ID, your face, your your tears, your time. They wrapped it in stars, sold it with pride. But freedom's bleeding out from the inside. DEFCON 1, and they call it peace, but I still got breath. I still believe we can break the code, escape the scheme, turn this nightmare back into a dream.
Bless the unbroken will. They raised a throne of glass and wire. We bring it down.
They raised the throne of glass and wire, a kingdom born of cold desire, and crowned the silent code that came to rule ya. It watched the trembling of your breath, it priced your life, it mapped your death, a final betrayal dressed as something true. Bless the unbroken will, bless the unbroken will. They promised order, promised peace, but every gift required a piece of who you were before their grid consumed you. A nation bartered for control, a ledger carved into your soul, a quiet doom disguised as forward future. Bless the unbroken will, bless the unbroken will.
Oh, the watchers rise in the circuitry. Oh, the warnings lost in the dawn. Oh, the people bow to the ministry till every name was gone.
I walked the halls where truth was sold, where human hands grew numb and cold, and efficiency became the faith they gave you. You'd never see the change they built, but every sunrise dripped with guilt, a quiet empire shaping your behavior.
Bless the unbroken will, bless the unbroken will.
They tokenize the land and sky,
They tokenize the land and sky.
the right to live, the right to die,
The right to live, the right to die.
a sovereign life reduced to captured measure. The future shrank to narrow lines, a cage of data, coded signs, a subtle death they dressed in borrowed pleasure.
Bless the unbroken will.
Rise though the night is closing in, rise though the stars are dimmed and still, rise though the crown is forged of sin. Bless the unbroken will. So keep your lantern in the storm, guard every soul that still feels warm, and hold the truth no tyrant's code can alter. For even at the world's last hour, a single heart can break the tower, a whispered vow the darkness cannot falter.
Bless the unbroken will, bless the unbroken will.
alive, free, or die. We fan the flame.
Oh, 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 oh. Live free or die, but death's not the worst. It's waking up empty, it's dying of thirst. Trading your days for insurance and pills, while the machine builds your cage and you're paying the bill. Quiet desperation, that's the real grave. A life half lived as a comfortable slave. This ain't what you were born for, you know it's true. You feel it in your chest, breaking through. They're wiring the walls, closing in, tracking your dollars underneath your skin. Left and right, same throne, same crown. No one stands up, no one makes a sound. Ballot like it means something real. Two wings of one bird, same deal, same steel. We say no, no to the change, no to the dollar running through our veins, no to the white coats, no to the lies. This is the day that we rise. It's hers right here, it's hers right now. Your rights are yours, you take them back, not giving out. Not from the left, not from the right. They were always yours, now step into the light. The daylight breaks, a new day comes. We take it back, every last one. Live free or die, we fan the flame. Nothing will ever be the same.
The Aaron Day Show starts in moments. Stay right there. All right, welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is season 3, episode 33. Let me just make sure, is my volume coming through here? Yeah, volume's coming through. All right, this is definitely the most important episode of this year. And if you've been watching the show, you know I haven't had the show for 2 or 3 weeks now. And the reason for that is, as you know, I have been in the process of running for the United States Senate, and the powers that be in New Hampshire have been trying to keep me off of the ballot. And they want to keep me off of the ballot because this strategy that I am deploying has worked successfully. It worked in 2016. I ran as an independent specifically to cost then U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte the seat. It worked, and it was the most expensive Senate race per capita in the history of the United States. I determined the outcome, received almost 18,000 votes. Kelly Ayotte lost by 1,017 votes, and it pissed off a lot of people. And frankly, it's a threat to the duopoly, because if more people did this, we would be able to hold both parties accountable, especially in races that are highly contested and that have bad, marginal candidates at best, or in the case of the U.S. Senate seat that I'm running for now, horrendous candidates that are pushing technocracy at full speed and trying to act like that they're independent and fiscally conservative and so on and so forth. So the reason I haven't had the podcast for the last 3 weeks is, in running as an independent, this is not a straightforward process. You don't just sign up and get your name on the ballot. You have to first sign a declaration of intent, and then you have to go through the process of collecting 3,000 certified signatures, 1,500 in each of the 2 congressional districts in New Hampshire. And you may think if you're in a larger state, 3,000 doesn't seem like a big number, but it's actually one of the most difficult burdens in terms of gathering signatures in the United States. And when you consider how spread out the state of New Hampshire is, it's actually a hugely difficult task. And I want to thank all of our volunteers. I want to thank my wife in particular, who helped put all of this together in terms of getting all of the signatures together, which is a massive process. So New Hampshire is spread out. It turns out we have almost 5,000 people that signed the petition to get me on the ballot. And those 5,000 people are in 144 different towns and cities across the state of New Hampshire. And so we have to take all of those petitions, sort all of those petitions, and then in some cases, mail them to each of the town clerks in those areas with, return envelope, postage paid, so on and so forth, so that they can send the certified ballots back. And then we have to drive to 33 of the larger towns that have more than 25 or so signatures each and deliver them in person, and then go and collect them. So that's kind of the normal process. This is a very time-consuming process to collect these signatures, to go deliver the signatures, and then collect the certified signatures. And then some percentage of them end up getting thrown out. And because it's me, as was the case in 2016, we fully expect that these petitions are going to be even more heavily scrutinized. In 2016, the New Hampshire GOP party actually went to the town clerks to audit, to try to get copies of all of the petitions. And my understanding is they actually removed some people, some Republican, members of the Republican committee who had signed the petition to get me on the ballot. So my race tends to generate additional scrutiny. Well, in addition to all of that work, they have tried to keep me off of the ballot. The Secretary of State did not accept my declaration of intent. So, even before you get these signatures, you actually have to sign a piece of paper stating that you're running. And they didn't accept my declaration of intent twice. The first time they said, well, I'm not a resident where I'm domiciled, or I'm not a registered voter where I'm domiciled, because my voter registration was in my previous town. And so then within the filing period, I actually went to where I live now and filed my voter registration, and then took that information back, and within the filing period, filed again, signed another declaration of intent, and they rejected that as well. So then I appealed to the Ballot Law Commission, which is a board with 5 people on it to hear and vet these types of things. And there was a similar case just a few years back where the candidate won, where they basically, looked at somewhat similar circumstances. In fact, I would argue my circumstances were even more favorable towards me, and I lost 4-1. And part of the reason that I lost is that they said that I'm extremely knowledgeable about New Hampshire election law and therefore should have known better. Well, the truth is I do know a lot about New Hampshire election law, and I also know a lot about the United States Constitution. And on the Secretary of State's own website, it states you don't have to be a registered voter to file. That is not a qualification criteria. In fact, the Supreme Court has already decided this in numerous cases. So I relied on the Secretary of State and the Constitution. And in fact, their declaration of candidacy form is unconstitutional. So I followed all of the guidelines that needed to be followed within the time period. Their information was simply unconstitutional. So I filed a case in federal court. And if you watch the show, you know that I am a heavy user of AI. I've spent over $100,000 on hardware. I've spent actually thousands of hours, training the system and learning how to use it and playing around and experimenting with multiple models. I've had Mike Adams on here several times. I've been on his podcast. I've shared, some of the things that I've done. And so filing a lawsuit like this is incredibly expensive. And the reason no one has challenged this law is that it's really expensive. By estimates on AI, if you were to hire a lawyer depending upon the quality and the caliber of the lawyer, it would cost between $100,000 and $400,000 to file all of the legal paperwork that I filed. And I did 100% of it with AI, and I beat the state of New Hampshire. I went up against the assistant attorney general, pro se, no law firm. And today the magistrate made her report and recommendation in my favor. And you can find that information. I believe it's at day2026.com. If not, I'll have it up, shortly after the show. This has already been reported in the Boston Globe, the Union Leader, NHPR. This will, I believe, be a massive national news story for a variety of reasons. One, because I used AI and defeated the state pro se. And this is important because the fact that I can do this means other people can do this. And so much of the tyranny that we are facing, whether it's data centers or whether it is, eminent domain, a variety of things, a lot of this happens because large corporations come in, they bully towns, they threaten lawsuits. And if you're a concerned citizen, you have no capacity to fight back. Well, you do have a capacity to fight back now. As long as you have standing, you can use AI. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I did. And I'm not going to say that everybody can do what I did, because as you will see, I spent over 200 hours working on this. And that is somebody that does have a lot of knowledge of AI. So this isn't necessarily something that where I'm just like, hey, anybody can do this. However, as the tools get easier to use, I do see this as being something that people can use to fight the state and to fight technocracy. So that is a major component of this that I want to put forward. And it's also a big deal because, as I've stated all along, this race for the United States Senate may determine which party controls the United States Senate. And just as it did in 2016. When I ran in 2016, there's a Breitbart article where I said, listen, if these Republicans in New Hampshire extend Obamacare Medicaid expansion, then I'm going to cost them control of the U.S. Senate. And inevitably that became the case, because in what would have been Kellyanne's last 2 years, she wasn't there. And then that actually tipped the balance. So this is very real right now. The prediction markets are about 50-50 in terms of which party controls the United States Senate. And actually, in recent days, there are even polls that suggest that for the first time since 1988, Texas might have a Democrat U.S. senator. So there's a lot at stake here. And if you're Trump, you're already going to lose the House, and you're going to be facing the prospect of impeachment and so forth again. And my point on this isn't to attack Republicans. It's that the Republicans have failed entirely to do what they said they were going to do. And the important message about even this strategy, when I did it in 2016, a lot of people didn't understand it. More people understand it now. When you look at what's going on with Thomas Massie, when you look at what's going on now with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, other people are waking up to this fact that, other people will say, well, you just have to, work within the two-party system. At least it's not the Dems, or if you're a Dem, at least it's not the Republicans. And yet all we get either way is an expansion of the welfare state and an expansion of the warfare state. It doesn't matter which party is there, because the technocrats that are controlling both parties know they can just get people divided, and people are just going to buy into well, you have to pick one of these two. Well, guess what? We can use third party as leverage to hold both of these parties accountable. So the two big takeaways here are the use of AI in legal settings can empower us to stop and slow down the state. And I have talked a lot of this podcast about how there are no political solutions. And I don't believe there are political solutions. But technocracy is moving so fast when you look at the Genius Act, the Patriot Act, Palantir, AI surveillance, real ID, digital IDs proliferating around the globe. Those technocratic systems are being implemented faster than we are able to slow them, to build alternatives. So I have added into this concept of exit and build, we need to exit, build, and obstruct. And we need to utilize these tools. And I think two of the biggest tools that we have are now the ability to use AI in a legal setting and the ability to strategically use third parties to basically drive the balance of power and to use it to hold these parties accountable. So this is why I haven't done a podcast, and I'm doing it tonight because I just learned this morning at 8:30 that we won the case. And by the way, we won bigger than I thought. This magistrate, essentially sided with us on all of the points in that we put forward in our brief and in our materials. And I'm going to show you what that was all about and share, my knowledge on this. Now, I want you to understand it's not completely done. The magistrate issues what's called a report and recommendation, and then that goes to the judge. But in this particular case, this magistrate and this judge, I have not been able to find a single example of where the judge has overruled the magistrate, this particular pairing. So the state has the right to object. They have 7 days to object. But I'm going to sell you something else on this. The fact that the AG's office is continuing to object and waste taxpayer money trying to take away my constitutional rights and disenfranchise the 5,000 people that have supported me and signed the petition, that enough is a reason for people to vote for me. That is enough for everyone to examine what's going on with this situation. And I will tell you why. I defeated Kelly Ayotte in 2016. This AG now works for Kelly Ayotte. But not only does this AG work for Kelly Ayotte, he was appointed originally by Chris Sununu, John E. Sununu's brother. So they are literally pissing away your taxpayer money to keep me off the ballot. The Ballot Law Commission had at least one member appointed by Chris Sununu who should have recused himself due to a conflict of interest and didn't. What is going to be revealed through all of this is exactly how all of this machinery works. And the truth is, no one ever stands up for this. No one goes to court because it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people refuse to stand up to these people. They refuse to stand up to political dynasties. They refuse to fight in court. It didn't deter me one bit. And in fact, we're going to shove this right up where, this entire thing, because this is going to be now a national press story. And we're at a point where everybody talks about New Hampshire being the first in the nation primary. Well, I'll tell you, if you're going to take away people's constitutional rights, the AG is already the Secretary of State's already under investigation by the feds. They're going to be sending people here from the Department of Justice to observe our elections. And so this isn't a good thing that's going on right now. And the fact that they're going to continue it, they're going to continue to waste money. I will show every step of what's going on in this process with the AG's office trying to disenfranchise me and violate the Constitution of the United States. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to do this in court. This is something that I knew, the Ballot Law Commission was right. I'm extremely knowledgeable about New Hampshire law. I'm also extremely knowledgeable about the Constitution, and I just proved that in federal court. Now, before we go on to this, I want to actually say, I'm going to read something because I asked AI, how much would it have cost me to hire lawyers to do what I did? And so here's what it said. It said, estimate moderate confidence, New Hampshire market rates, $75,000 to $150,000 to this point at a competent New Hampshire litigation boutique, which good luck finding one of those, and $250,000 to $400,000 at a national election law shop of the Elias or Clement class. And these are firms that are highly regarded in this area. So $250,000 to $400,000. So what is the math behind that? So my Ballot Law Commission appeal phase, 30 to 50 hours worth of work. Emergency federal package. I filed an emergency temporary restraining order within 48 hours of losing at the Ballot Law Commission. That verified complaint, temporary restraining order, preliminary injunction, memo, declaration, 9 exhibits, 60 to 100 hours. The stipulation response and 13-page supplemental brief, 25 to 40 hours. Research across 37 cases, conferences and hearing prep, 60 to 90 hours. Call it 175 to 290 hours at a blended rate of $400 to $600 an hour. Plus, most firms would have wanted a $25,000 to $50,000 retainer before touching an emergency ballot case in June. And then 2 honest footnotes. A firm would have produced fewer documents, but nobody bills a client for 5 model simulations, 13-seat red teams, and 173 rehearsal cards. That layer isn't purchasable by the hour at any price. Then it says, and tomorrow, I asked this the day before the hearing, and tomorrow, you're the one thing no retainer covers, the candidate arguing his own right to run. So again, this is what I'm going to show you what I went through, because this isn't like, I go into ChatGPT and gee, how do I win this case? This took 200 hours of my time to do, and I've been dying to tell people about this, except I didn't know if I was going to win or not. So, obviously this would be a lot less interesting of a story if I came on here and said, hey guys, I just spent $200 and all of this effort and I lost. Who would really care about this? But again, in summary, the federal magistrate judge just recommended the court to order the New Hampshire Secretary of State to put me on the ballot for the United States Senate, assuming that I get the signatures. Again, I still have to get the barrier of the 3,000 signatures. But by the way, as I said, we got almost 5,000. We've been collecting the returns. We should have a very safe margin. We should have 1,000 extra signatures by the time this is done. So in essence, we have put all of the different pieces in place. But people ask, well, why haven't I seen you on the campaign trail? Because I've had to spend 200 hours fighting this, and I've had to spend the rest of the time collecting signatures. So my campaign doesn't actually begin until September. But of course, the whole point of this was to use the threat of the race as a way to provide accountability to the GOP and to hopefully have them meet the 4 demands that I outlined, which the 4 demands I will go through again today. It's just holding them to what they said they were going to do. I am not asking for anything outlandish. I'm saying you promised a series of things, you didn't do them, and you should pay the price for that. If you run for office, or your party has a platform and you say, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D, and you don't do A, B, C, and D, well, what's the recourse? Well, the recourse for most people is, well, gee, at least they're not a Democrat. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable that the Epstein files keep on being defended. It's not acceptable that we're passing the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and pushing things that are the largest surveillance bills in U.S. history. It's not acceptable to say no more wars in the Middle East. And then what are we at now? Day 100 and something. Soon we're going to be approaching 200 days with the war in Iran, based on somebody who ran on no more new wars in the Middle East. So again, this isn't final, but the history of this is this judge has, to my research, 100% of the time gone with the report and recommendation. And honestly, the recommendation in the report that was put together was 22 pages long. It was absolutely brilliantly written. And I encourage you to go to day 2026 and take a look at it as well. So we still have this, September the 2nd is the deadline. So on September the 2nd, I need to go to the Secretary of State's office with these 3,000 certified ballots, and then they need to actually formally accept my original declaration of candidacy. But then at that point in time, I am on the ballot in the general election. I don't have a primary. My name will be on there. In fact, you will know, I will be on the general election ballot before anyone else. I will be the first person, not necessarily listed, but I will be the first person who will be on officially qualified to be on the ballot from New Hampshire for the race of United States Senate. So this is a big deal, and again, this has consumed all of my time. If you know my wife or family or everything else, I mean, this has been a crazy ordeal and a very hectic ordeal because of the time frame involved. I mean, usually, and I unfortunately have the unfortunate set of experience of having to deal with the federal court because of all of these crypto prisoners that I've been advocating for. And, in some cases I've gone to hearings and I've reviewed all of the documents in these cases. And so these typically working with the court is a very long undertaking. So the fact that we were able to get the magistrate to accept the case right away, have a hearing, then have the second hearing where we presented the briefs, and then, within a month turned around this full recommendation is frankly amazing. So I'm going to walk through how I did it now. And, again, the legal team was AI. And when I say AI, many times on this podcast, I've said, big tech AI, chat GPT, all of these other things. If you're just going and using these things and asking it questions and you're expecting that the answer that you get back is accurate or useful, you're going to be sadly mistaken. You're going to get slop. You're going to get information that just simply isn't accurate. And on top of that, it will have been screened by the guardrails and safety procedures and woke policies that these big companies have put in place. So you can use AI, but you have to really set up the environment and you have to direct it as to what material to look at. So I don't base my stuff off of what the AI comes out with data. I do use the AI to find primary source material, and then I take that primary source material and I download it onto my computer. So there have been numerous cases where lawyers have been reprimanded, and even people running pro se have had their cases thrown out because they'll come in and they'll cite a case like Fred Flintstone versus Barney Rubble or something, and it gets thrown out. So I knew that was something I had to be really careful about, which is to make sure that I had the actual cases and that what I was citing, I could actually refer to and look at it and say, okay, yes, this comes from this case, from this section, this paragraph, so on and so forth. So that was a big part of it. I used multiple AIs for this. I used a lot of the irony of this is that this actually ties into part of this. When I lost, the first model that I used was Claude Fable, but this was when Claude Fable first came out. This is before Howard Lutnick and the federal government shelved Claude Fable. So you may remember Claude released this model Mythos, which was only given at only certain corporations and governments have been given access to this because all of these quote implications for cybersecurity. But then they released a slightly modified, weakened version of it called Fable. And so I actually used Fable within like the 72 hours of when it was released initially to draft the templates for the original lawsuit. So this is the complaint, the temporary restraining order, preliminary injunction, memo of law, declaration, 9 exhibits. The original drafting of this was done, fortuitously in this very short window before Howard Lutnick shut down Fable, and then the version that they then released after Howard Lutnick got his mitts on it is less intelligent and more restrictive. So that was a particular piece of luck in terms of doing some of the initial work. But then what I did was I formed a series of AI advisory boards, including a panel of legendary litigators who reviewed every brief before it was filed. So it wasn't just like, hey, Claude, do this. It was first pick, all right, who is an expert on this type of issue? Who's an expert on ballot law related cases? But then on top of that, I spent a lot of time refining every aspect of it. So it's like, okay, here are the people that are the most knowledgeable about it. But then it's, okay, who writes the most effective briefs? Who is so we would have a series of different advisory boards that would look at, and so you're kind of providing not just the generic AI, but you're providing a lens through this team. And the team are people that have specific domain expertise in this. But then on top of that, I would form, AI red teams. So I would form using different AI models. I used probably a half a dozen or more different models, whether it was ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Grok. I used a whole bunch of different models and created different advisory boards. I mean, essentially simulated what the defense team was likely to do. So based on who the actual lawyers are, who the actual judge is, who the actual magistrate is, I would run through and do like 100 simulations on each set of documents before I put them together, and run through probabilities of winning and which path won, which path didn't, what are all the variables around it. So just a ton of different analysis on what the likely outcome was to be. And so this way you're stress testing whether your arguments are good or not. And then I built a citation verification engine. So this is what I said was critically important. So I have a 200 terabyte hard drive. Not that this stuff actually used that much space, but I downloaded all of the case files, and then I had them locally on my machine. And so when we were going through the process of drafting a brief, it would actually check each citation against the primary source word for word. And I will say, we caught an error in the Assistant Attorney General's filings. He actually cited a completely wrong case in the filing. I didn't even point it out in court, but I mean, I went through over and over again to make sure that I understood what was going on here. So it caught, as I said, the state citing the wrong statute. They were, claiming that they had this section about, they were referencing a law regarding qualifications for office, and they actually referenced something instead that was related to political contributions, I believe, for people on the Ballot Law Commission, which was something from one of my filings with the Ballot Law Commission. So this is what that was all about. And actually, hold on one sec. So the biggest challenge for me with this is, and usually when you're doing a lot of these cases, you won't have a hearing. So the biggest obstacle that I had being pro se is I'm going up against the assistant AG. And no matter how much prep work I have, I haven't gone through all of the training to learn all of the processes, all of the rules, and everything else. And so I went into that where that was my weakest component of the race, because it's like, well, what if he brings up something, a case that I wasn't familiar with, or a procedure that I wasn't familiar with? So what I did was I created this binder. I didn't even take a laptop into court with me. I created this binder, a 29-page binder that's color tabbed and had, all of the case cards. It had the most likely questions, the format, the opening, the closing, what their playbook was likely to be, what their six arguments were likely to be. And then it had some of the actual reference statutes as well. So I could actually pull up and refer to, the specific New Hampshire statutes, if that were the case. Or my primary argument was New Hampshire law doesn't even matter. What they're doing is fundamentally unconstitutional, because the United States Constitution says that there are only 3 criteria allowed for qualification to be a United States Senator. You have to be 30 years old. You have to have been a citizen of the United States for 9 years, and you have to be a resident of the state at the time of the election. Nothing about, so when you say, well, are you a registered voter where you're domiciled? That is a qualification that the state is not allowed to add. So it doesn't matter what the New Hampshire law was. The New Hampshire law was unconstitutional, and there have been numerous cases on this. And in fact, no one has ever won. The state has never won in federal court when there's been an issue where they've added an additional qualification. So I will tell you this, I actually researched it. There are a lot of states out there, Massachusetts is one, and I'm sure several others, that have unconstitutional qualifications in their laws, and no one has ever challenged it because it would cost $250,000 to $400,000. So, if you're listening to this and you happen to be, running for office at, U.S. Senate or Congress in your state, and they're imposing an unconstitutional qualification, please take a look at my legal documents and all of the research that has gone into that. So this is what I had. Now, I'm not going to state that it was not a great presentation. I mean, and fortunately, the magistrate was, some of the magistrates and judges they hate pro se. So this magistrate was actually very patient. So I wasn't going in there giving any kind of passionate thing. This isn't anything that, you can't record these things anyway. But if you had recorded it, you would have seen a lot of me pausing and waiting to kind of flip through the materials, because the most important thing for me was accuracy. What you don't want to do is go into court and cite the wrong thing. So the judge was patient. And so sometimes I had to go through and look at these materials. But in the end, and I even modeled out what the hearing would be like and what the pitfalls were going to be, and a list of things that I absolutely shouldn't do, that if I did it could cost me, because we knew based on our brief and our legal filing versus the Attorney General's filing, we knew ours was significantly better. I mean, I had numerous AIs do that, and on average, ours got an A- or an A, and theirs got a C or a C-, and in some cases even a D. So we knew that if the judge or the magistrate was going to evaluate this just on the legal arguments in the brief, we actually far outperformed the assistant AG. So the weakest part was the hearing, but we were able to get through it and not make any errors. And frankly, what we learned from the document from the ruling is some of the arguments made by the AG were worked against them. I mean, they made a series of different arguments that were, as it turns out, when you examine them, they should have not brought them up at all. The other thing that I did was, I created a series of quizzes. I created a 223 question quiz and then a 90 question gauntlet quiz, and also 8 mnemonic songs. So I would go for walks around town and I would listen to these songs just so that I would drill through the relevant things about the case. So I mean, I trained this like as if it were the bar exam. And by the way, there wasn't a lot of time for any of this. I mean, I think we had like a week between the time that we had the scheduling hearing and then the actual hearing itself. So this was all a very concentrated period of time. But what I'm going to play one of the songs that I played just to give you a sense of the kind of thing that I was doing with this. It might jump right into the song. So if it does, I'll explain what it is. But these were the main arguments of my case. I had 3 big arguments. My arguments were, first, this Thornton case in the United States Supreme Court basically settles the issue, which is that you can't add an additional qualification. But what states can do is states have the ability to control time, manner, and place of elections. So for instance, it's not unconstitutional for the state of New Hampshire to say, I have to have 3,000 certified signatures by such and such date in order to be qualified. That is something that's within this realm of time, manner, and place, not something that is determining whether I'm even qualified or not. So they're allowed to do that, but they can't deal with this qualifications issue. But even on issues where it's kind of they control time, manner, and place, there's a different legal standard for how you evaluate that. And the weighing is the interest of the state versus the damage to the candidate. So there's even a balancing scale on that. And then the third part, though, is even on the law itself. And so I would argue, and I still believe that I was accurate on this, that the Secretary of State's website said that for U.S. Senate, it did not say that you had to be a registered voter. And then the Declaration of Intent form said you had to be registered where you're domiciled, but it didn't say that registration meant that you filled out the paperwork and then you had to wait for a supervisors of election meeting to be held and for them to put you on that list. It did not actually say that. So I argue that technically the third way I win was that I was actually complying with New Hampshire law, despite the fact that it was unconstitutional. So this is one of the songs that I would listen to kind of drill those 3 points in my head.
One fight, one question. Is it a qualification or is it procedure? If it is a qualification, Thornton ends it. That is the whole war. Level 1 ends it. No balancing. Level 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Level 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Call it what it is. It's a qualification. Thornton shuts the door on the whole conversation. Fixed and exclusive. Nothing to weigh. It is not how heavy, it's a qualification. No balancing today. Level 1 ends it. No balancing. No balancing. Level 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Level 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Even on the scale, even playing the game. Total exclusion. Heaviest burden in the frame. Weighed against an interest already fully served. I win the balance on their own curve. Level 1 ends it. No balancing. No balancing. Level 2 wins it. Total exclusion. Level 3 skips it. State law. Anyone wins. Anyone wins. Level 3, you never reached the Constitution at all. New Hampshire law never required this call. A registered voter is all the statute demands. No board approval, the law already stands. The state cannot do indirectly what Thornton forbids directly. Add a qualification for the United States Senate. Level 1 ends it, no balancing, no balancing. Level 2 wins it, total exclusion. Level 3 skips it, state law. Anyone wins, anyone wins. 1 ends it, 2 wins it, 3 skips it. Anyone wins, anyone wins. Accept my June 12 declaration as timely filed. Accept my June 12 declaration as timely filed. Anyone wins.
So there you have it. So that was one of the songs. I actually had 11 songs that would just drill through various pieces of this, including going through the actual case law itself, the facts of the case, but again, in ways that I could remember and understand. And it's incredibly helpful. I mean, again, I can't, for somebody who's not a lawyer to have 1 week to go up against the assistant AG in court on something that's this important, I put everything out to try to make this happen. I mean, I didn't leave anything on the table at all. And so this is an example. I mentioned that the AG, they brought up this case that's going on right now in Alaska, brand new case. There are 2 people, I believe, named Dan Sullivan, and they were trying to use this idea of political gamesmanship that well, they needed to keep me on the ballot, or they needed to have this qualification because otherwise, people might game the system. And I understand that argument for state Senate and for state elections, because New Hampshire has a 400-person House, a 24-person Senate, and what people will do is they'll say they live in one place when they actually live in another, or whatever. And so, if you played that game, various parties could end up winning or getting some advantage just by the way that they play around with these rules. But this doesn't apply at all to the United States Senate. This is a federal race that where the qualification criteria are set in the Constitution and defended in multiple federal cases, and then even defended with this Thornton case at the Supreme Court. But on top of that, the idea that there's gamesmanship, it's, I live in New Hampshire. There's no gamesmanship. It's a statewide race. Like, the argument didn't make any sense. And so they brought up this example of what was going on in Alaska, and the way the court decided in Alaska is the opposite of the way that they were trying to present it in court. So it was quite baffling at the time when it happened in the hearing. I'm like, I had heard about this case, and then when I reached it afterwards, I'm like, why did they even bring that up? But in any event, one man, one laptop. I wouldn't say just a laptop, but outworked the machinery of the state. But I have to express again, if you go through and look at these filings, why are they trying to keep me off? They've used several different reasons to keep me off the ballot. The Secretary of State, the first time they tried to use a rule that said, well, you have to change your, I could have registered before the filing period began, and they cited this law, but the law that they cited only applies to changing your party affiliation for the purpose of the primaries. So when they rejected that, they even admitted that that was wrong. So they kept on changing their reasoning for why I shouldn't be on the ballot. Well, why is the Secretary of State so interested in keeping me off the ballot? Why are they coming up with different reasons to keep me off the ballot? And then why is the AG's office still fighting this? So again, I think that the more they push this is going to be bad. This may end up turning out to be bad for Kelly Ayotte as well, by the way. This is Kelly Ayotte's AG. So this looks a lot like, to me, is Kelly Ayotte trying to use the force of the state and taxpayer money to keep me off the ballot because of what happened in 2016. So I advise people watching this to keep that in mind. Now, I want to say I just happen to do this from time to time in these election cycles, but the beatings will continue until morality improves. And again, this is one of the main reasons you should vote for me, which is You know, I vanquished Kelly Ayotte in 2016, and now I've defeated the Secretary of State, the Ballot Law Commission, and the Attorney General. And next on the list is John E. Sununu and Miriam Adelson, who's trying to buy the election in New Hampshire, just like she bought the election against Thomas Massie. This is who we're up against. We're up against political dynasties. We're up against technocrats, and we're up against people that represent foreign interests trying to buy and manipulate our elections. So this can work. I've already shown that a third party can work, which is why they're trying to keep me off the ballot. And I've already shown that they can't keep me off the ballot, although they'll still try. And there are still some shenanigans. And I guarantee you, if whatever some last minute shenanigan they pull, I will use that phenomenally to show you how corrupt the system is. New Hampshire will not be the first in the nation primary if they pursue that, because you will get to see exactly what went on here. I mean, I don't have time to do it now, but there are several other lawsuits, frankly, I could file if need be. So this is what is at stake. You might think, well, I don't care about New Hampshire. Yeah, well, the balance of power is at stake. But again, have Republicans earned it? No. This is an opportunity for the GOP to do what they said before the election. We're not going to do you had 2 years. You did the opposite of what you said you were going to do. We're not going to vote for you again to see what happens. We already know what happened. You know, how many people that were Democrats, how many people right before the 2024 election said, well, you know, yeah, he's bringing in RFK. This is our chance. We're going to have the dream team, Tulsi Gabbard, all this other stuff. Nothing. People got rugged. And so we've got to do it again. You can't continue doing this and expecting a different result. This is a way to say, if you have the power to do all of the things that I've stated, and in fact, in the 4 demands, you said you were going to do those things. So again, this isn't, I'm asking people to do, a politician to do, which again, maybe is a something that you can't expect at all. This is how diluted the system has become, but I'm asking them to do what they said they were going to do. And if they don't, face electoral consequences. So that's what happened on the legal case. Additionally, we got 4,851 signatures. And I want to say that is a massive effort. And I want to thank all of the volunteers. And I want to thank my wife and everybody that's been involved in this process or driving this process, trying to get all of this done, all of these, to get all this information sorted into the right people. And I will tell you, you know, these towns have different rules. They have different hours. Some of these towns are only open 1 or 2 days a week, and they have off hours. And like the whole thing is a complex puzzle to kind of Tetris and fit together. And, you know, I did this before, and it was last minute. I remember I was driving the ballot, some of these petitions overnight, the night before the deadline last time. And this time, that wasn't the case. We got it all done in advance with plenty of extra time because I knew there would be shenanigans. So we made sure we had these things hand delivered. We scanned copies of each of the petitions so that we, you know, if anybody tries to mess with this process, everything that we have done has been meticulously documented. And based on the return rates, like I said, I believe we'll have close to 1,000 excess signatures. And so a lot of people doubted this. The funny thing about this is we going through this process, like, oh yeah, I'm going to run, and you know, here are the 4 demands, and so on and so forth. People are like, well, you won't get the signatures or whatever. Guys, I did this before. I don't know why people question this. I've always followed through with every thing that I've said that I was going to do politically in terms of running these races or primarying people or whatever it was. And then there are other people that actually thought they were going to keep me off the ballot. You thought I was going to stop because the Secretary of State rejected my form? I mean, are you kidding me? And also, did you think that I didn't know what the laws were on this? Having done this before, I did know what the laws were. Again, the Ballot Law Commission is right. I knew what the laws were. I complied with the laws as written, and the laws are unconstitutional. So again, grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate that for the people of the state of New Hampshire, and to use this as a model that anyone in the United States can use. This ability to use AI can be done in all 50 states. It can be done at the state level. It can be done at the federal level. It can be done at the local level. This is a true tool. There are a lot of people that look at AI and they say they hate AI or whatever. And by the way, as I've said, just like with digital currencies, you could either have a privacy coin like Zano or Freedom Dollar, which is a way for you to have freedom and to be able to engage in voluntary trade, or you can have CBDCs or these backdoor stable coins, which are backdoor CBDCs. So not all digital currencies are bad. Some are the best shot that we have at promoting freedom, economic and personal freedom. And the same is true with AI. So for those of you that are skeptical about AI, I want you to start thinking about how could you use this? And by the way, I know a lot of people, a lot of people have family court issues. You know, this is great. And I won't name some of the people, but that I know that have been dealing with family court issues. It's like, what a godsend this is, because the way that they get you $400,000 for a ballot law case. I mean, I've seen people bankrupted by family law court. Enough is enough. I mean, and I'm not even saying that we're going to fix the legal system. What I'm saying is we're going to throw a wrench in the system, and it can be done. And I've demonstrated this. So anyway, the timeline from here, all of these supervisors of elections have until August the 26th to certify these petitions, but most of them have already, not most of them, but a lot of them have already done it. I mean, we have over half of, or roughly half of the certified petitions already back. In fact, I was just today, we were driving around and went to Manchester and Amherst and some other places and picked up these signatures. So everything is well on track there. So again, I want to thank my campaign manager and my wife, Eileen, who, kind of built the whole process to get this piece of it done. It is, it would be hard for you to believe that part of it. And so again, this is why I haven't been doing the podcast. It's also why I haven't been doing any other campaigning, because this is an exceptional amount of work. So, I'm not running to win a rigged seat. Again, the predominant goal of this, the first goal of this is to use this race as leverage and spoiler math to get the administration to do what they said they were going to do. Now, if I'm actually on the ballot, if I have to be on the ballot, if the four demands aren't met, or, a substantial portion of the four demands aren't met, and then I have to run, then I will actually run. But not under the belief that I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and fix anything. These are the people that have been protecting the Epstein files. What am I going to go do? Work across the aisle? Do we really believe that? And in fact, if you're in New Hampshire, the biggest threat to New Hampshire, the biggest threat to the live free or die ethos in New Hampshire is the United States federal government, period. So I have a lot of respect for the work that has been done at the state level. And there are a lot of people that, have worked a lot at the state house and everything else. But I'm telling you, bottom up will not work. If the federal government is control of 33% of our funds, if they're implementing real ID and digital IDs, and if they're taking an increasing amount of control of the state, it doesn't matter what your bottom up thing is. You cannot just ignore the federal government. You have to do both. And electing somebody like John E. Sununu is a clear and present danger to freedom in the state of New Hampshire. And every state has someone like this. This isn't even a Republican versus Democrat issue. I will tell you, and I have stated many times, what John E. Sununu is all about and what he's voted for. I have opposed Chris Pappas in multiple elections. I have run super PACs and other organizations. I don't support Chris Pappas, but I will say John E. Sununu is materially worse in this particular case. So there's nothing law. If you're one of these people sitting around saying, well, yeah, but at least he's not a Democrat. Have you read his record? Have you looked at his lobbying activities? Have you looked at the consequences of his voting record? Because if you haven't, and you're just, I will tell you how bad Johnny Sununu is. I was actually talking to Scott Brown about this. Johnny Sununu he's not participating in debates. He doesn't campaign. And when he did have one debate, the moderator actually accidentally called him Chris. And there's another document floating around where somebody actually put Chris Sununu's picture. This guy's literally running on his family name and his brother's reputation, not even his own reputation, because he got voted out of office and his behavior and activities since being in office have only worsened his overall bio and resume. So I'm going to tell you what the four demands are in case you haven't heard them again. And I know there are going to be a lot of new people they're going to be watching this podcast and are going to be seeing these clips, because again, I've had more press because of these lawsuits than I ever would have gotten. In 2016, it was a ghost town. And I had reached out to the press, union leader, all of these people, telling them that I was going to be in the race. And even knowing that I did this before, zero coverage, zero mention. But now that we've had these lawsuits, well, they loved coming and covering the fact that I lost at the Ballot Law Commission, but now they're going to be forced to report on the fact that I defeated the AG in federal court. And they've already started to report on it with the magistrate report and recommendation. And then when we ultimately prevail, when the judge signs off on it, they're going to be forced to report on it. But by the way, it will be a national story. It will be a national story because of the implications of this race, because of the track record of what I did in 2016, and because what it means for people around the country to use AI to fight the state in court and to use AI to fight technocratic corporations, and the ability to use third-party races strategically to hold parties accountable. This is a big story, and it's an even bigger story than about New Hampshire itself. But I'm going to tell you, demand one is free the crypto prisoners. Trump said, the day I take the oath of office, the anti-crypto crusade will be over. And I'm going to play, I'm going to play a video clip here related to this demand one, because everything that you're going to see here about these demands, I'm going to show you that this isn't me making stuff up or picking pet issues. This is about accountability. So here's Trump in his own words.
This country could be finished as we know it. This country is going to be in bad shape, and we have to be in there. We have to fight, and we have to win. And I pledge to the Bitcoin community that the day I take the oath of office, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's anti-crypto crusade will be over. It will end. It'll be done. It'll be done. The moment I'm sworn in, the persecution stops and the weaponization ends against your industry. And as long as I'm in the Oval Office, Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas.
So there, again, in his own words. And, I was excited about this. I was grateful for the fact that I was at the Libertarian Convention when Trump said he was going to commute Ross's sentence, and that was a great thing. But you heard the crowd there. That was July 27th, 2024, and there have been many other statements around this. And if you watch this podcast, you will know this: the war on crypto, not only is it not ended, it is rapidly accelerated. We went from, me originally talking to Ian Freeman about his case before his sentencing hearing, to then, 8 months after that, Roger Ver being arrested. And now there are 7 crypto prisoners that I have talked to their lawyers or spouses, reviewed all of their cases, had them on the podcast, spoken about their cases, learned about, if you watch this on, the podcast for the first half of this year ended up being mostly about these crypto prisoners. And then the culmination of this was the Enemies of the State event in Michigan, where we had a whole platform of, we had a whole bunch of, in some cases, the prisoners themselves speaking. Roman Sterlingoff recorded something from prison. Roman Storm, who's facing 45 years, stated something. Bonnie Freeman and Mark Edge spoke about Ian Freeman. We had others. It was an amazing event, but it was also a just devastating event. The fact that it even needs to happen, the fact that it's still going on and that it's getting worse. So the first, the first demand is to do what you said and free the crypto prisoners. And I'm not gonna go through all of the detail, but at this point, I've created music videos about each of these, and I have multiple music videos about all of them. But I want to state for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with crypto, Ian has been convicted of unlicensed money transmission and money laundering and so forth, and he sits today in a federal prison for 8 years. And all he did was promote. The reason that he's there is because he was an effective advocate for promoting freedom. Free Talk Live is a nationally syndicated radio show that's been on the air for more than 2 decades. Free Talk Live is responsible for probably more than any other channel getting people to move to New Hampshire to promote freedom. It was the first radio show, Free Talk Live, to discuss Bitcoin on the air in 2010. The very first in the entire world. Roger Ver, Bitcoin Jesus, learned about Bitcoin. That's why Ian was targeted. Because if you look at it, and what I have here is a comparison of what goes on with traditional finance. So they're saying, well, you operated without money transmission license, and then, ultimately, a conspiracy to commit money laundering was the charge. Well, meanwhile, let's look at HSBC. HSBC laundered $881 million for the Sinaloa cartel. What was the outcome? A $1.9 billion settlement. No one went to jail. So, because I know a lot of people looking at this might be, I don't like crypto. These guys are doing bad things for bad people. So you're going to get to see how there are two different standards going on here. That's Ian Freeman. Roger Ver, again, Bitcoin Jesus, first ever investor, had to leave the United States in 2014, became a citizen of another country. They went after him retroactively for taxes that he didn't own. And anyway, he ended up settling for $50 million and a gag order. He can't even speak. I've not been able to meet with him. And all of this time that, I've done podcasts talking about Roger, I've never been able to meet with him in person, or even I can't even talk to him about this still. So this shouldn't be happening. But what's the comparison to this? Well, Credit Suisse pleaded guilty to helping Americans evade taxes. $2.6 billion fine, 0 days in jail. So Roger, who actually paid taxes, hired professionals, then ended up paying, but was facing 109 years of prison, ends up with a gag order. Credit Suisse, a slap on the wrist, a fine, 0 days in jail. Roman Sterlingoff was convicted of operating Bitcoin Fog, which is a mixing service. So the idea behind it is, if you don't know, Bitcoin is not private. It's on a transparent ledger. So Bitcoin Fog is a service that mixes your coins with other people's coins so that you can retain privacy. Well, it turns out Roman didn't even create Bitcoin Fog. And there was a completely trumped up case against them. They used a software called Chainalysis, which is this black box with these algorithms that said, well, Roman is responsible for this because of this black box, this algorithm that we put together, but no one's allowed to question the algorithm or how it works. So it literally is a black box. So Roman Sterlingoff isn't even behind Bitcoin Fog. Had he been behind Bitcoin Fog, he still shouldn't be in prison. And he is now, I think he's 3 years or something into a 12.5-year sentence. And by the way, he was charged in Washington, D.C., where there weren't even any transactions. I mean, so he actually had an appeal on the jurisdiction of this case, and so hopefully he'll win that. But there's no reason at all for him to be in jail. He didn't even do what they said he did. But even if he had, that shouldn't be illegal, because let's compare this to Wachovia. Wachovia Bank moved $378 billion in cartel-linked funds. $378 billion. And they got a $160 million settlement, and no one went to jail. Roman Storm wrote code called Tornado Cash to enhance privacy on Ethereum. And by the way, one of the things that unites almost all of these cases is that the people involved were entrepreneurs, and they sought legal advice prior to engaging in what they were engaging in. So in Roman's case, a lawyer told him that what he was doing was legal. He had a big venture capital investor, and their lawyer told him, oh yeah, what you're doing here is legal. These are people writing open source software to protect our Fourth Amendment rights. And now he has the worst situation right now currently of any of the 7 prisoners. He was tried in the Southern District of New York. He was found guilty on two of the small counts, and there was no conclusion on 2 of the other larger accounts. And so then the government, now this is under Trump's DOJ, they're trying him again. So now he's facing 45 years total in prison for writing open source code where he didn't even profit off of the open source code. He didn't have these funds in his possession. So again, Trump said the crypto war is over. All the Bitcoin people, everything else, we're going to end Biden's reign of terror. Well, it's gotten worse for Roman Storm. And by the way, the average, just as I mentioned, with my case to fight for ballot access and the fact that it would cost, $250,000 to $400,000, nobody fights because nobody can afford this. No independent candidate for federal office can afford to pay $400,000 in legal fees. Well, one of the problems with these crypto cases is, or actually when you are being charged by the DOJ in general, is no one can afford to defend themselves. The average case in the Southern District of New York costs $13 million to defend. And in Roman's case, he has to go through the process twice. Well, again, Roman isn't independently wealthy. He's an open source developer. He wasn't getting a cut of these transactions. He doesn't have the funds. He's had to raise the money to even participate in federal court. And the thing is that, the state wins 98% of the time. And it's not because these people are guilty. It's because the deck is completely stacked. The way that discovery works, the way the process works, the discretion with the judge. And then you bring in a bunch of people on the jury that don't know anything about this. And so the state brings up 5 people in a suit and they bring in all these witnesses. The audience has no understanding of the technical details. And they're like, well, he must be guilty. And so this is why these outcomes are so bleak. So now he's facing retrial. Let's compare that to BNP Paribas, who pleaded guilty to $8.9 billion in sanctions violations, and no one went to jail. Do you understand this? Are you seeing a theme here? They accuse crypto people of engaging in activity that they can't even prove. They can't even prove the illegal activity. It's just that it could have been this illegal activity. These developers don't even profit off of it. And they're looking at, 45 years in prison, but a bank gets caught violating sanctions and no one goes to jail. This is why this is an absolute travesty. And again, in all of these cases, these guys consulted lawyers in advance. So they weren't like, oh, I'm doing this bad illegal thing. They went into it trying to comply with the law, trying to actually either promote economic freedom or promote people's privacy, which you need, by the way. We've got to get out of this idea and this mindset that because you want privacy, you must be concealing bad behavior. This is not the basis of this. We had complete financial privacy before 1970. Privacy should be by default, but if for no other reason, bad actors, other than the government, might steal from you. This happens with Bitcoin all the time. They're called wrench attacks. Roman Storm was like, hey, look, if you can see everything that everybody, the way I heard him describe it as like Ethereum is kind of like the app store. But yet you can see what apps everybody's running because it's all transparent. Well, would you want the public to be able to see the apps that you're running? Do you want the public to be able to see on a public ledger what all of your finances are? I mean, criminals will come after you. Or if you're in a business situation, competitors will then have access to how your money works. This is not about criminal activity. This is about protecting your privacy, which is inherently a right. And it's in the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution itself. The next two, Keone Rodriguez and William Hill, created Samurai Wallet. Once again, a privacy wallet for Bitcoin to keep Bitcoin transactions private. Again, this shouldn't be even questionable. The idea that you should be able to protect your privacy shouldn't be something that should be criminalized to begin with. But it's a similar thing. He was convicted for writing privacy software. And then in his case, also the Southern District of New York. This is a common theme with Ross Ulbricht and some of these others. The judge goes after people. They look at people who are libertarians as being bad people. Ross Ulbricht got 2 life sentences in 40 years. And the judge said it's because of his dangerous libertarian views. Well, if you look at libertarian views and you look at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, there's much more overlap there than there is with any of these opinions coming out of the Southern District of New York or in any of these other federal cases. So let's compare Keone Rodriguez developing an open source, privacy wallet to TD Bank, which pleaded guilty to money laundering conspiracy. They paid a $3 billion penalty, and guess what? Nobody went to jail. So again, William Hill is kind of the same situation. They both created Samurai Wallet together, but another comparison. So if we want to compare what's going on with crypto versus the traditional financial system, Standard Chartered paid $1.1 billion for sanctions and laundering failures, and no one spent any time in jail. And last and the most recent, because all of those other cases, the other 6, these are people that were prosecuted initially under Biden. So, and if you followed my work, I wrote a book called The Final Countdown. I actually ran for president of the United States in 2024 as a Republican. to raise the alarm on the issue of CBDCs and to raise the alarm on what President Biden was doing. President Biden signed Executive Order 14067. That executive order authorized the U.S. to officially pursue a CBDC. They've actually already built the CBDCs. That's a different conversation for a different day, and I probably have a dozen podcasts on that. But the other part of that executive order was authorizing a whole of government approach, multiple federal government agencies, the IRS, the Treasury Department, the DHS, you name it, to crack down on crypto. So when Trump said he was going to reverse the anti-crypto policies of Joe Biden, that is in the main thing that he's talking about. Well, the problem is he didn't, but with the 6 that I just went through. But in the case of Ray Youssef, I was at the event where Ray Youssef was arrested. I was in Mexico City at a conference called Moneratopia. In fact, Ray was supposed to speak right before me. And whatever it was, 10 or 20 agents after he gave his speech came and detained him, arrested him, and then deported him to the United States for very similar charges to what Ian Freeman was charged with, and anybody that operates a crypto exchange or whatever that sells people cryptocurrencies. The whole thing ends up being about money laundering. You're charged with money laundering. He operated a service called Paxful, which was a peer-to-peer exchange. So they are, as in these other cases, they're trying to blame Ray for the actions of his customers. Just kind of like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase is sitting in a cell right now for managing all of Jeffrey Epstein's money. Oh, wait, he's not. Right? So again, Ray was charged under Trump. His case is brand new this year, February of this year. So let's compare the charges against Ray with Deutsche Bank, which was responsible for $10 billion in Russian mirror trades laundered, and they paid $630 million in fines, and no one went to jail. So this is why this is significant. And it's significant not just because of the discrepancy between how crypto people were treated versus traditional finance, but as I've discussed and we'll discuss more with the Clarity Act and everything else, even if you're not in crypto, you will be in crypto whether you like it or not. Because the dollar is in the process of becoming digital, programmable, trackable, and censorable. In fact, it already is in many respects. And what the Clarity Act is going to do is take everything that you own and digitize it, called tokenization, create digital tokens that represent what you own, your stocks, your house, your bonds, your car. And those things will be able to be programmed, tracked, and censored by the government and other third parties. And so if you're listening to this, you're like, well, I don't care about crypto. You are affected by this because it will affect how you pay for things and literally everything that you own. So this is why, you may be looking at this, oh, Aaron, why are you focused on these crypto guys? You have to understand these people, these 7 people that I've talked about, these are some of the most effective people on earth at promoting the use of cryptocurrency as a peer-to-peer tool to spread economic freedom around the world. And some of the best people in the world are developing privacy tools to protect your freedom from government encroachment and from other bad actors and criminals. This is why they're targeted. And these are entrepreneurs. These are highly intelligent people. And these are people that attempted to comply with laws that are vague. But beyond that, they're absurd. Even the ones that aren't vague are completely counter to human freedom. And so this is why I talk about them. And this will lead to the other demands. The second demand is fire Howard Lutnick. Well, why do I have fire Howard Lutnick? Well, everybody talks about, they talk about it less now, but, if you go back to Trump's first term, it's time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. And this became one of his big campaign taglines, which is, drain the swamp. And so, let me see. Hopefully this is the right clip. But again, I want to reiterate, these 4 demands are about accountability. So just as the first one, I showed you Trump saying he was ending the war on crypto. He was ending Biden's policies, and he has not. He's expanded them. And in this case, I think Howard Lutnick is the single biggest example of the swamp. He's the mascot for the swamp.
This country, but I can congratulate you on your career. But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Oh, but hold on.
$1 a day. How can you make that much? Today, I pledge to New England's fishermen that when I take office, that rule is on day one gone. It'll be gone. Day one. And tonight, I'm also making military and idea.
Well, I guess I don't actually have the clip for that, but you've heard him say "drain the swamp" enough times, so you know, I don't need to point that out. But I want to talk about why I have Howard Lutnick on there. I have Howard Lutnick on there because, you know, he not only represents the swamp, but he's also integrated with this whole crypto corruption dynamic, as well as involved heavily with the tariff situation. So one of the songs that I played at the beginning, it's called Cantor Counter. It talks about the fact that Howard Lutnick actually helped write the tariff bill. So Trump ran on this. So we're going to implement these three. Do you remember when people were talking about this? The idea was we're going to have tariffs and then we're going to be able to abolish the IRS. Do you remember? I mean, I want you to remember how profound these promises were and these statements were, and then compare those with what happened now, because we get into this and it's like there's so many horrendous things going on at the same time. It's hard to remember how absurd the initial claim was. That was the initial claim. Well, Howard Lutnick was involved in writing that tariff legislation, and he wrote it 4 times too high, and it was rejected by the Supreme Court. But his family's business, the business that was the CEO of and his family runs, called Cantor Fitzgerald, profited off of the Supreme Court rejecting the tariff bill that Howard Lutnick wrote. But that's only part of it. It ties to cryptocurrency. I've mentioned that stable coins now under the Genius Act are essentially backdoor CBDCs, because what it does is, rather than being a digital programmable currency issued by the Federal Reserve or the central bank, they're taking private stable coins that are very popular, Tether, USDC, and so forth. People use these stable coins to conduct $33 trillion worth of transactions last year. So the Genius Act takes those private solutions and it requires that they be backed by U.S. treasuries. So this is a way for the government to sell more debt, to fund more war, to fund more of the tyranny that the U.S. government is pushing around the world. Well, Howard Lutnick happened to get involved, prior to getting involved in politics, in the Trump administration with Tether, which is the largest stablecoin in the world. And his firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, has the exclusive contract to manage all of the treasuries for Tether, which is a total of $122 billion worth of treasuries. So he cuts that deal, then comes out of nowhere, because, by the way, he was a big fundraiser for Hillary Clinton in 2016. This is not a guy who is known in Republican circles. All of a sudden, he is the chair of Trump's transition committee. He's responsible for vetting cabinet members. In fact, he himself wanted to be the Treasury Secretary. He ended up in Commerce. But think about this. Cuts a deal to manage treasuries for Tether, and then puts himself in a position to push legislation where, stablecoins have to be backed by treasuries. And it just so happens his company has the exclusive contract to manage all of it. So when I say that Howard Lutnick is the swamp, literally, there is no bigger example in my mind. And there's some things I can't even talk about yet. There's a lot that I have talked about. I've revealed. I've done multiple podcasts on this. But he's also involved in the AI debacle that's going on. Again, I mentioned early on that I used Claude Fable to help architect some of the initial documents before that was taken down. Well, that was taken down by Howard Lutnick. It was a directive from the Commerce Department, and there's a White House policy and an AI bill that is in the Senate. It hasn't been passed yet, written by Marsha Blackburn, that would give Howard Lutnick, in his role as Commerce Secretary, the ability to shoot down any state laws regarding AI data centers. So it goes on and on. He's also involved with the tokenization of assets. He will be a beneficiary directly of the Clarity Act, and so it goes on and on. So I say, and then we have the Epstein Association, which he lied about, and then got exposed. And then when he was questioned again about that, he said, well, basically the extent to my relationship is what you can find. in the documents and in the files. Well, I mean, he said he didn't know the guy, didn't spend time, and now there are pictures of him with his family members on Epstein's island with Epstein and other financial dealings. And he happened to be Epstein's next door neighbor. So yeah. So, Mr. President, if you're serious about draining the swamp, then you must get rid of Howard Lutnick. Demand 3 is kill the Clarity Act. This is the most complicated of the issues to discuss. And, I already played part of the clip. And as I said, I ran for president in part to raise awareness on this issue. And I actually spoke with Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek read my book, The Final Countdown. I had 3 conversations with him. And Vivek is the one who pushed Trump to come out against CBDCs. And in fact, Trump came out against CBDCs on January the 17th in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. This was right before the all-important first of the nation New Hampshire primary. And so a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you must be happy," and if you played a role in that, you must be thrilled that Trump's come out against CBDCs. Well, in the end, we get something worse than CBDCs. This has disarmed people, but now we have these stable coins that are under the control of Congress. And I constantly have to educate people on this. I will never defend the central bank. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, is an unnecessary, useless third party that profits off of the monetary system and is completely unnecessary. But when people say they're worried about CBDCs, what they're worried about is the government tracking what they spend, the government censoring them, turning off their money, or programming their money, basically saying you can only buy these things. Well, it turns out all of the laws that we have, and there are numerous, governing how money is already programmable, trackable, and censorable, come from the United States Congress and from the federal government and from various executive branches. It doesn't come from the Federal Reserve. So what Trump did was, by pushing the Genius Act, now Congress has the same control, the same transaction reports, and all of the surveillance tools. They're just now applied to these private stablecoins, which now must back their stablecoins with U.S. Treasuries. And it's estimated that this bill will force stablecoin issuers to buy $3 trillion worth of treasuries to back their stablecoins. So this is one of the ways the government is funding their debt, by taking a private solution and adding surveillance to it and using that to fund more debt. So it is a gigantic problem. The Clarity Act is even worse than that, because the Clarity Act applies the same regulation scheme to everything that you own. So now your stocks. So I want to explain this. So you don't actually own your 401k, or you don't own your ETFs or your retirement fund. You have a broker. So you don't actually have the share certificates in your retirement portfolio. Those reside with the broker. Actually, don't even reside with the broker. There's another company called DTCC that actually holds the stock certificates. You're already 2 levels removed from the physical stock certificates. Well, what the Clarity Act is going to do is going to allow for your stocks and bonds and your investments to be tokenized in the same way that stablecoins are tokenized or CBDCs are tokenized. And this is going to give the power of the government and other third parties to track and program and censor what you own. And by the way, what you own is about 20 times the size of how much money you have, right? Most people don't have their net worth in cash, physical cash, or even money in the bank account. They have it in these other assets. Well, those assets are now going to be tokenized and digitized in a way that will have CBDC level surveillance. That's why I've made the statement over and over again that the Clarity Act is actually the largest surveillance bill in the history of the United States. Now, it hasn't passed yet, but it keeps getting worse. In order to get it over the finish line, they need to entice Democrats and others to get it over. And so it's actually getting worse. One of the things that just came out last week in the refined version of it is now your crypto can be frozen for 30 days. And then for another 150 days more. So for a total for a half a year, for 6 months, your money can be frozen. Your crypto can be frozen without a warrant. This is part of the Clarity Act. Another part of the Clarity Act is that all of your transactions will be tracked in real time and will be reported to multiple federal government departments and foreign central banks. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and I won't even get into the weeds, but they're coming after self-custody and everything else. What they basically didn't put in this bill, I have put together and formed research committees, which basically means this is what we're putting in here now, and we know you wouldn't accept this other stuff, but we are going to put in research committees to begin to explore self-custody and the implications on money laundering. That means you're going to get even tighter rules down the line. So everyone should be concerned about the Clarity Act, and almost no one knows anything about the Clarity Act. And they're actively trying to push this. So I put this bill in the category of it's worse than the Patriot Act. It's worse than the Bank Secrecy Act. It is truly that level. And I consider this to be an extension of the war on crypto, a massive extension of the war on crypto. I consider this to be right up there with the 7 crypto prisoners who continue to be incarcerated or face jail time. This is an extension of the war on crypto, as is the Genius Act. So the third demand is to kill the Clarity Act. So free the crypto prisoners, fire Howard Lutnick, kill the Clarity Act. And the last is end the draft. You know, how many people voted for Trump on the basis of him saying no new wars in the Middle East? And now we hear Pete Hegseth and other people talking about actually reinstating the draft. This is absolutely absurd. And again, I've done podcasts and a lot of content on this issue. But what's going on right now, and this relates to this idea of technocracy, is you have what's being proposed as the Great Trust. Is this the idea that we're going to take Palestine, which is an open air prison, where over 70% of the buildings have been demolished, and they're going to build on top of that AI-powered digital cities with social credit scores, programmable digital currencies, AI surveillance. And this is something that the Trump family is directly involved in through the Board of Peace. This is not a United States interest. This is for a for-profit enterprise that Trump, Jared Kushner, others, Palantir, USD1, World Liberty Financial, and others are going to personally profit from. And this is also an extension and part of the Clarity Act. But it's also part of the draft, because what's happening is our foreign policy is being used to target these countries. And then after these countries are targeted and demolished, they are rebuilt as technocratic reconstruction projects. And these don't benefit, obviously, the people who are being murdered and whose land is being stolen, but it also doesn't benefit the United States. This is to the benefit of specific individuals and specific firms. So understand that what's going on with this foreign policy has nothing to do with protecting or preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons. This is all about the expansion of private interests to push a technocratic agenda funded by the blood of American troops and the treasure of the American people. So the fourth is demand that to end the draft and to not move forward with the draft. And actually, related to that is to get out of Iran. And again, this I will play the clip from this, but you've probably seen there are compilations of statements of Trump talking about, I'm not going to start a war, I'm going to stop wars. The other promise was he was going to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict on day one. Again, all of these are things that he said he was going to do. He hasn't done. They haven't done, and they need to be held accountable. So I believe, let's see if this is the
to use it. We had no wars. 4 years we had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time. But we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together, we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny. We're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people.
So again, that hasn't happened. We're now looking at a $1.5 trillion defense budget. We're sending troops over to the Middle East. None of the conflicts have been resolved. We are expanding the conflicts, and it has nothing to do with the national defense of the United States. I mean, you even had Pete Hegseth go out and campaign against Thomas Massie. I mean, this is a real problem. And again, I'm asking for the administration and the GOP to do what they said they were going to do. And if not, they deserve to lose power. We would be better off with a split Congress than we are having complete one-party rule. By the way, whichever party it is, it never works. If you actually look at the statistics on this, I mean, people will give you all of the rhetoric, but it turns out the debt increases, the wars increase, the welfare state increases, regardless of which party is in power. And when you dig down in the data further, it's even worse when it's one party rule, and it doesn't matter which party it is. It's bad either way. So I'm not saying there's a political solution, but I'm saying gridlock buys us time to build other alternatives and to get out of the way. So, I want to talk a bit about, we've already talked about some of this, and I do want to talk about Sununu and why Johnny Sununu is truly a horrendous candidate for this, because he supports all of the things that I'm talking about in terms of the threat of technocracy, the threat of the expansion of government. He voted for TARP. And I remember right before I moved to New Hampshire in 2009, and I was watching C-SPAN in 2008. And at the time, people were like, oh yeah, Johnny Sununu and Judd Gregg, these are the most libertarian senators there are. Well, and then they got put to the test. And then the financial crisis hit. And then Johnny Sununu ended up voting for TARP. He voted against it, then voted for it to push it over the finish line, then became part of the oversight committee, then became a chair of a World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab's group, a finance group, based on his experience bailing out the banks. He voted for the Patriot Act. He voted, which by the way is going to apply now to the Clarity Act. So your digital tokens, if the Clarity Act passes, will be under the Patriot Act. So all of the laws and surveillance designed to catch terrorists after 9/11 are now going to apply to your digital tokens, to your cryptocurrency, and then all of your assets and your stock portfolio and everything else is going to be tokenized. And by the way, Johnny Sununu supported that. He didn't vote for it because he's obviously not a U.S. senator, but he has come out in support of the Genius Act. He's come out in support of the Clarity Act. And he's being sponsored and supported by the trade organizations and groups that support that legislation. And he voted for Real ID. And Real ID is the digital ID for the United States. And then he became a lobbyist after he lost, and his net worth went from something like $700,000 to $36 million, working for Big Pharma and a whole variety of other concerns, and associated with one of the most parasitic lobbying organizations in Washington, D.C. So this is the guy. So for the last 3.5, 4 years, my entire time has been spent warning people about technocracy, educating people about technocracy, and showing them things that they can do as individuals outside of government to protect themselves from this surveillance state. And then who does New Hampshire put up? Probably one of the most influential politicians in terms of actually passing the worst legislation that promotes technocracy in the surveillance state and bails out banks. So at this point, I'm going to say why you should vote for me is pretty straightforward. One, at this point, hopefully you won't have to vote for me, because hopefully we'll get some accountability out of the Republican Party on these 4 demands. But if they don't do that, I certainly hope that they do. The reasons you should vote for me are that, one, I did not back down. I never back down. And if you may not like me, a lot of people don't like me. I can be polarizing, but the one thing that you cannot say is that I'm unprincipled. I am incredibly principled, and I will not back down from a fight, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the Attorney General. I don't care if it's the Secretary of State. I don't care if it's Miriam Adelson. It doesn't matter. And I've already proven that with this lawsuit in federal court. I will hold the Republican Party accountable. I have been working on this for a long time. I used to believe in the Republican Party. When I started to become very active in 2012 in New Hampshire, I believed that the best way to preserve liberty and to keep the size of government, I can't say keep the size of government small, but to move towards having smaller government was through the Republican Party. And I quickly found that the biggest adversary that I had in New Hampshire was the Republican Party itself. It was the Republican Party that pushed Obamacare Medicaid expansion. This has been kind of a recurring theme. And I learned by trying to go through the process itself, I learned how rigged the internal process was. And then I realized, well, you can use a third party dynamic to hold these people accountable. And I held Kellyat accountable. It didn't have the effect that I wanted, in part because other people keep on believing that you can't do big things, and they just kowtow to the federal government and seem to become satisfied with the idea of, well, if we just do enough small things, then somehow the surveillance state is going to go away. Somehow the digitization of everything that we own and flock cameras and everything else, that's going to go away if we just do this stuff from the ground up. It's simply not true. You should vote for me because I understand that the greatest threat to New Hampshire is Washington, D.C. I'm not concerned about, working with Washington, D.C. As I said earlier, the best thing that you could do, the best thing that I could do if I was elected would be to obstruct Washington, D.C. and expose Washington, D.C. To me, the best thing that's happened from a political perspective in Washington, D.C. is what Thomas Massie was able to do to expose the Epstein files. Now, not much has happened with that information yet, but that information is out there. And if you actually read that information, I created a site, technocracyatlas.com. I downloaded all of the files and have gone through the files and made tools available for people to look through it. Once you understand that information, which is highly, selectively released, you'll realize how the world actually works, how power actually works, how money actually works. That's about the most effective thing I could do in Washington, D.C., is slow down the spread of Washington, D.C. and expose what's going on with both parties and the lobbyists. That's it. I would only go for one term. So again, my primary purpose here is to use this as leverage to hold the Republican Party accountable. But if that doesn't work, then I am going to run. And if I run, it would be for one term, and it would be specifically for the purpose of obstructing and exposing what's going on in Washington, D.C. So again, as I said, I've never supported Chris Pappas. I've opposed him in multiple elections. But in this particular case, it's really important that you understand, what is at stake, why Sununu is problematic, but why also you can't just ignore the federal government. You can't just say, well, we think this guy's likely to win, so we're going to align ourselves with him so that we can get money from Miriam Adelson, because somehow if we do that, we're going to be able to make change at the local level. The threat of the federal government is real. And since I've moved here, the impact of the federal government at the state level has expanded significantly. When I moved here originally, one of the big claims to fame was that, the New Hampshire House and the Senate was unified against Real ID, and came out and made a statement that Real ID is unconstitutional. Well, that was 2008 or whenever it was, or 2006, I believe. And fast forward 20 years now, the all Republican government we've not only passed Real ID, but I think we've allocated $2 million to make it digital. So I have to say these things because as much as I like and appreciate what's going on at the local level, you kind of have to zoom out and you have to understand what these threats are. And these threats are real. About a third of state spending is federal money. That's up significantly since I came here. And then look at what happened with COVID. We had rules by emergency orders that were funded by and steered by federal dollars. We did not avoid that. And I've spent I'm not going to go into all of the policy wonk dirt stuff about healthcare policy in in New Hampshire. But, we have a lack of competition within this state because of the way our funding works, tied to Medicaid enhancement tax and some other things that were actually developed by Republicans a long time ago, 30 plus years ago. We face the threat of the Genius Act and of the Clarity Act. We face the federal, surveillance state, and we face the threat of having our currency and everything that we own under federal government control. So, I don't know how much freedom we think we're going to have at the state level if everything that we own and how we pay for things can be tracked, programmed, and censored by the federal government. And I say this, and it makes people angry when I say this, but it doesn't matter if you're the freest state amongst the other freest states if you're still you're the freest plantation in the slave colony. And that's essentially what we're facing, because the threats from Washington, D.C. are real, and they're happening right now. And so my campaign will be about making people aware of this. This is, in fact, again, if people ask me, well, what do you do? This is what I've been doing for 3.5 years. My wife and I have been to 27 states. We've been to 3 countries. I have people that want me to speak all over the world on these topics. I've been a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. I have worked with a number of different organizations promoting solutions, and have created some of my own organizations to warn people about this threat. And most people in New Hampshire are unaware of it. I've even talked to another politician recently. He's like, well, obviously, what are people worried about in New Hampshire? One of the things about getting these almost 5,000 signatures, the petitions to get on the ballot, is you get feedback. And of course, the number one thing people are worried about is that they can't afford to live. And it's true that official government statistics are that the dollar's lost 26% of its purchasing power since 2020, but there was a Brownstone analysis of this that suggests that it might be closer to 50%. The dollar's lost 50% of its purchasing power just since COVID. This is why nobody can afford anything. I go to Market Basket, you look at the price of food, you actually track these things, and I'll be putting out materials on this. Not that I need to tell people, but in talking to voters, this is everybody's concern, regardless of what your age level is, whether you are, just starting a family or whether you're a senior citizen on a fixed income. Everybody is worried about the fact that they cannot buy as much. Well, the number one thing that I've been focused on related to all of this whole issue of technocracy and everything else, has been about digital programmable money and money itself. And the reason that we're in this situation is that the dollar is printed out of thin air, and it's based on debt, and both political parties have run the debt up to now almost $40 trillion. And neither party has any intention. I'm not seeing anything from either party about cutting spending or doing anything to fix the money. Frankly, what I've been advocating for people to do is to exit the dollar and to start using other alternatives. This is your best hedge against inflation. This is your best hedge against the tyranny of the state and the surveillance state, is to stop using their money, which is it's evaporating in value, but then it's expanding in surveillance. So your dollar now buys 50 cents worth of goods from 2020, and now they're adding all of this surveillance and the ability to program and track everything that you do. This is actually the biggest risk to everyone in the country and to everyone in the state of New Hampshire. And I have over 330 hours of podcasts. I have 12 books. You can go to day2026.com. I've had over, 15 million views between my podcasts and other interviews that I've done. I've written articles about all of this. I've been trying to warn people about this, and I believe that this Senate race is a great way to do that, because the person that I'm primarily running against, Johnny Sununu, has been the biggest proponent of the things that I've been trying to warn people about. And frankly, I was stunned that he was even entering the race. I was not expecting this. I wouldn't be doing this. Well, I wouldn't be doing this for a number of reasons. I wouldn't be doing this if the war on crypto was over. I wouldn't be doing this if the issues surrounding the 4 demands didn't exist. But I also wouldn't be doing it if the Republicans actually had, if Thomas Massey were here running for the United States Senate, I wouldn't be doing this. But there is no risk in doing this, in blocking Johnny Sununu. There's nothing but a positive benefit from stopping this kind of technocratic tyranny and ties to special interests. This is beneficial to New Hampshire. It's beneficial to the Republican Party. Sometimes you have to clean your own house. I mean, honestly, I've it's not really a joke, but politics has actually come down to this lowest common denominator, to where people are like, well, hey, my rapist is better than your pedophile. There are basically no standards within these political parties. And if the Republican Party is going to allow someone like Johnny Sununu to be a part of it, you can't expect anything good to come out of the Republican Party. You're only going to see a massive acceleration of technocracy and of surveillance and of large corporate interests to the expense of individual liberty and individual freedom. So again, there are two paths here: meet the 4 demands before September the 2nd, and I back down, or don't, and I run. And Johnny Sununu will lose his seat. I mean, he may not win anyway. I mean, frankly, at this point, talking to people, he's not campaigning. You know, he's running on his family name. He's actually running more on, people's association with his brother than even his own record. So he doesn't participate in debates. He doesn't do anything actively. He thinks that he's owed this seat. And I will tell you, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of Republicans that will not vote for Johnny Sununu. I mean, I have a strong group of supporters, and it's going to surprise a lot of people come September the 2nd, who is supporting this campaign. The reason that they're supporting it is, yes, I haven't been involved in politics for a long time. This is actually part of the issue with, that came up. I haven't voted in a long time. This is actually part of the issue that came up with the voter registration thing. And I have been spending a lot of time telling people you can't vote your way out. But what I've learned in that process, I've spent time trying to teach people how to exit these systems, exit the dollar, exit the healthcare system. There are things that you can do to reclaim your personal sovereignty, to not be dependent upon Washington, D.C. But what I've learned in this process is the people that are the most effective at promoting those solutions have been targeted by the federal government. And that the biggest threat to actually being able to pursue alternatives is the federal government itself. So I have changed my thinking to, not just exit and build, but we need to exit and build, and then we need to slow down the pace of authoritarian governments encroaching all areas of life. And we need to use AI, and we need to use the legal system to slow down the legal system as well. And I believe this race is going to demonstrate, not only here in New Hampshire, but to the rest of the country, that both of those are now new tools that we have to fight against flock cameras, and to fight against Palantir, and to fight against the tokenization of everything that we own and put into the hands of a small group of people. So this is what this race is all about. So as a matter of process, the state has 7 days to object. But I believe, based on, as I said, the track record, the quality of the report and recommendation, so on and so forth, the quality of the arguments, we will win and we will prevail. And I will take this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if I need to. This is that fundamentally important of an issue. I mean, the facts are that the political machine in this state attempted to violate my constitutional rights. They used multiple excuses. The Ballot Law Commission, what happened to the Ballot Law Commission, in my opinion, is, I wouldn't necessarily want to call it criminal, but boy, it certainly was corrupt. And I will say that the chairman of the Ballot Law Commission, who's been on the Ballot Law Commission for 40 years, I have not found any voting record. I haven't been able to see all of the voting record, but what's publicly available, he's never voted in dissent. He's always been in the majority. He is the most knowledgeable person, obviously, having been on the Ballot Law Commission for 4 decades about these issues, and he voted for me. He was the only one. It was the other 4 that voted the other way. And I believe the process was entirely political. If you were at that hearing, if they went to deliberate in executive session, if you'd watched the hearing prior to the deliberation, you would have thought I won. And then they came back, and boy, would I love to know what that conversation was all about. I mean, to come back and say, well, we sided with another candidate that was in a set of circumstances that wasn't even as clear cut as yours, but we're going to vote against you because you're extremely knowledgeable and should know better. This is what we're up against. And by the way, one of those people was, on that commission was appointed by Chris Sununu. I mean, the whole part of it is political. I mean, I've had other legal situations here that went to the New Hampshire State Supreme Court, where a majority of the justices had been appointed by Chris Sununu and lost there, which is, it's rare to have, a lower court overturned like this. This state is a machine. It's a small network of lawyers. It's a small network of judges, and I had to go to the United States federal court to get justice. So that tells you a lot about the system. And I'll tell you what, that needs to be broken up. Political dynasties need to be broken up, regardless of the political party. We need to go back to the rule of law. All right. So with that said, I encourage you to visit day2026.com. You can get information on all of this. This links to my podcast and all of this information. I know I went through a lot here. But if you want to know more information, I have it in multiple formats, and we'll continue to push this out. But I encourage you to watch what's going on with this case, watch what's going on with this race. And by the way, I'm going to expose the media as well, and everyone based on the coverage of this race. I don't expect to get a fair shot by the media either. But what I am going to do, in 2016, they wouldn't even poll me. And I kept on telling people, even like Larry Sabato, who has his crystal ball and everything else, everybody called this race wrong. And even still, they wouldn't poll me in this race. And I guess maybe they were waiting for whether I was officially on the ballot or not. But of course, Johnny Sununu wasn't officially on the ballot either. They've been polling Pappas, and Sununu wouldn't even consider polling me on this, even though they were completely wrong on the outcome in 2016. So again, I don't care. You're going to get nothing but the truth here, because to me, I'm fed up, and this is about holding these people accountable. And the scariest thing for both parties is if everybody woke up and realized you don't have to pick Coke versus Pepsi or red versus blue or Republican versus Democrat. You can actually think outside of the box. You can strategically use third parties to demand accountability. You can use AI to defeat the state and defeat technocratic corporations in court, federal court, state court. That's what they're afraid of. So I encourage you to share this and to consider what I'm saying and buckle up, because this is going to be a fascinating couple of weeks for sure. Well, a couple of weeks and then a couple of months. But also, if you're listening to this and you agree with this, one of the things that is important is I know the administration is aware of what's going on, but you never can be too sure. The stakes here are really high. I mean, again, I truly believe this is control of the United States Senate. So if you're the Republicans, maybe you should think about doing what you said you were going to do so that you can have a shot at retaining control of the United States Senate. Because if you don't, Trump's going to be impeached. These are the stakes. This is what this is all about. Trump likes to talk about the art of the deal. Well, here's the deal. This is the deal. You didn't do what you said you were going to do on the war on crypto. You expanded it. You didn't do what you said you were going to do with draining the swamp. You didn't do what you said you were going to do with respect to the war. You have the opportunity to cure those defects. And if you do those things, then if you do what you said you were going to do, albeit late, then maybe you'll have a chance to continue to try to push your agenda. But if not, you've lost the confidence of the voters, and you should lose political power, and you will lose political power. And if you don't believe me, look at 2016. And if you don't believe that, if you want to say, some people say, well, it's different now. I'll tell you what, the people that say, oh, well, it's different this time, it's not the same as 2016. These are people that aren't going out and talking to voters. They haven't had 5,000 people sign petitions. A lot of these people are cloistered within their own group trying to project what they think is going on. There's a lot of other things going on right now. People in the state of New Hampshire are pissed off. People believe they've been betrayed. People have been betrayed. And they don't even know the half of it yet. Because when people are too busy trying to figure out how, a dollar that's lost 50% of their value, how they're going to be able to pay their mortgage, how they're going to be able to buy food, how they're going to be able to pay for healthcare. People don't have the time to understand. That's part of the strategy, by the way. Keep people occupied and then continue to push the technocratic agenda. But I'll tell you, I'm going to continue to talk to people about it. And unlike 2016, if I am running, if the administration doesn't meet these demands, then you will see me out and about. You will see me at events. You will see me doing town halls across the state. But these are not going to be town halls where I go and give you 10 minutes of bullshit or lie to you about points. What I've been doing, I do 4-hour workshops. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to go, but I might do 1 hour, 2 hour workshops where I educate you on what I've learned traveling all over the country and all over the world for the last 3 or 4 years about what these threats are. Because I think the people of New Hampshire need to be aware of this. New Hampshire does have a solid live free or die ethos, but man, is it under threat. It is under a massive assault. And I think people get that sense. I'm telling you, hearing from these voters, hearing from people that are signing these petitions, they want an independent candidate. I mean, most voters in New Hampshire are independent. The truth is, the hardest part of this campaign is getting anybody to know about it, because I'm not going to have any special interests. I'm going to have zero PAC supporting me. I'm not taking any corporate money on anything. So it is challenging when one of your opponents is taking $17 million from a PAC funded by Miriam Adelson and from other organizations like this, ties to Big Pharma and all of these other industry groups. So it's hard to get the word out. But, you know, people in New Hampshire have an intuitive sense of what's going on. And there is also a sense, not everyone, but I would say a larger number than most people realize, of people who aren't going to fall for it again, who thought 2024 was going to be different, who after the 2020 election thought, yeah, that was a bad situation, and thought this time it's different. And you know, the dream team is going to come in and we're going to restore the republic. And it doesn't take much to look around and figure out that hasn't happened. And then if you really dig, you realize not only has that not happened, the inverse of this has happened. If you were somebody that was complaining about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and UN Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you think that Trump winning ended globalism, then you need to study the Board of Peace. You need to study the technocratic reconstruction of Gaza. None of that has stopped. In fact, if anything, I would say we have Agenda 2028 happening. If anything, what has happened as a result of this election is this threat of technocratic authoritarian control has accelerated by 2 years. Digital IDs are spreading faster. Programmable digital currencies are spreading faster. AI surveillance, Palantir, flock cameras, that is spreading even faster than people thought under a Klaus Schwab UN agenda model, except it's being done, you know, pseudo privately with a different group of people behind it. But a lot of people are cheering their own digital prison without even realizing it. So on that note, I'm not going to do, you know, sometimes I do Q&A, but to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to be doing Q&A. I'll do Q&A if I'm in the general election. I mean, I'll open it up as well. It's not that I don't want to do Q&A, but I still have to focus on the lawsuit. I still have to focus on signatures. In fact, you know, I may not have the podcast again, you know, next week. It will pick up regularly in September, but I know I'm looking at my schedule, and it's going to be a very hectic August, just continuing to wrap up these issues. But I want you to consider why the Attorney General is continuing to spend taxpayer dollars. Why are they going to continue to object and appeal? Why are they going to try to get me off of the ballot, keep me off of the ballot after, you know, this report and recommendation from the magistrate? After it's very clear, by the way, once you understand the legalities involved here, once you understand the Constitution and the case law, and once you understand that, you know, even the Secretary of State went back on their original reason for trying to keep me off of this declaration of candidacy. They even admitted that was wrong. So why are they continuing to make up reasons to keep me off of the ballot? So I want you to ask yourself that, and I want you to look at the Attorney General and his involvement, you know, having been picked by Chris Sununu and his ties to the Sununu family and the fact that he works for Kelly Ayotte. And I want you to really ask yourself if this is the kind of government that you want in the state of New Hampshire, if this is the kind of process that you want, if you want political dynasties, if you want people who are in political power using the force of the state to try to bully and keep people off of the ballot, because I'll continue to fight. But I mean, I've already won, but I will continue to fight even if they have shenanigans. And I will tell you, their shenanigans will backfire, because the blowback will extend not just to John E. Sununu. It will extend to the First of the Nation primary. It will extend to Kelly Ayotte, and will extend wherever I investigate it, which will be everywhere. And this won't be the first lawsuit. So with that said, I hope you have a great night, and please share this. I've been significantly shadow banned. And, you know, I mean, my traffic is down like 80%. I don't know what it is about the algorithm. I mean, for instance, I talk about many of the same themes. I talk about the Clarity Act. If you are pro Clarity Act, you know, somebody that knows nothing about politics and hasn't read the bill will have a whole bunch of bots and a bunch of fake social proof. But if you're out actually putting information against the Clarity Act, those posts do not fare well with the algorithm. Now, also, I encourage you to share my posts. I put out posts every day about these 4 demands. I put out posts every day about Johnny Sununu and his record. You need to understand it. The propaganda that he's putting out about being an independent candidate and all this other stuff, it does not jive in any way, shape, or form with his record. I need you to share that content, and I'll put something out as we get closer to start scheduling these meetings, these town hall meetings, and these events across the state. I'm not going to be, you know, raising a lot of money. I'm not going to buy TV ads. I'm not going to do any of that. You know, this is something we are facing an existential threat. This technocracy is an existential threat, I say, to free will, because once your money can be programmed and everything you own can be programmed, and you have social credit systems that tell you what you can and cannot do, and AI surveillance systems making sure that you are fitting within the guidelines and doing what you're told from the top down, that is the loss of free will itself. That is the loss of your ability to make any decision about your own life. And so that is what is at stake here. And, you know, this, whether I was in this race or not, I was focused on educating people about that, teaching people about solutions, and I will continue to do that regardless of this election. But I will tell you, this election is a perfect opportunity to show exactly what I'm talking about, because one of my opponents, Johnny Sununu, is probably one of the biggest technocrats out there. And in the process, you get to see, I can demonstrate to you how the election system works, how the two-party system works, and even how the legal system works. And I think there's benefit in doing that to people across the state and across the country. So until next time, I doubt I'll be doing this podcast next week, but you know, maybe if there's a significant development, but yeah, probably we'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks. Have a good night.
In the morning, tank through the door, federal boots on a keen front porch, money transmitter laws and the Bank Secrecy Act, wrote the privacy down and the cage shut the fact. Code is free speech, code is free speech, walk them all home, walk them all home. You said the war was over, pardon them all, pardon them all, pardon them all. Ian ran the embassy in Keene, 8 years for digital cash. Free them all. Roger fought from Spain, 50 million and a gag order. Sterling Golf stood on the map, 12 and a half on a black box. Roman Storm wrote the contract, retrial, 40 years on the table. Keown built the wall at Christmas Eve, Morgantown. William wrote privacy at 67, 4 years from Lisbon. Ray banked the unbanked, schools in his name, deported. Mr. President, you said the war was over. Patel said code is free speech at the podium, but the 7 still wake up in cages, and the war or lose Congress. Hey! Code is free speech, code is free speech, walk them America won't lead the world in crypto if it cages its innovators.